multiple tons of methamphetamine every single month. That is the production capacity federal prosecutors say belongs to one cartel most Americans have never heard of. Not the Sinaloa Cartel, not CJNG. The United Cartels, also known as Carteles Unidos, a Michoacan-based drug trafficking organization the U.S. government now considers one of the most significant methamphetamine producers on the planet. And yesterday, a federal grand jury in the District of Columbia unsealed an indictment against two of its highest-ranking members, Juan Jose Farias Mendoza, age 31, Israel Vega Farias, age 37, both from Tepalcatepec, Michoacan. Both charged with conspiracy to manufacture and distribute methamphetamine for importation into the United States. Both charged with providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization. Both charged with using, carrying, and possessing firearms, including machine guns and destructive devices, during a drug trafficking crime. If convicted, both men face a maximum of life in federal prison. And here is the detail that makes this indictment different from almost any other cartel case this year. These two men are not just soldiers, they are family. Farias Mendoza is the son of the United Cartels' top leader. Vega Farias is his nephew. The Justice Department just indicted the boss's own blood. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly who the United Cartels are, why the Department of Justice considers them a national security threat on the level of the Sinaloa Cartel and CJNG, and how a methamphetamine seizure in a small town outside Knoxville, Tennessee, cracked open an investigation that now reaches directly into the inner circle of one of Mexico's most powerful drug lords. We are going to show you who El Abuelo really is, the man both of these defendants call family. We are going to break down the distribution empire. Prosecutors say spans 8 major American cities and extends across 3 continents. And we are going to show you why the Trump administration's terrorism designation turned a drug trafficking case into a national security prosecution overnight. Stay until the end, because the line one federal prosecutor used to describe this indictment tells you exactly what the Justice Department is planning next. Let's start with the man at the center of all of it. Juan Jose Farias Alvarez. Everyone in Michoacan calls him El Abuelo, the grandfather. A name that sounds almost affectionate until you understand what federal prosecutors say he actually built. El Abuelo is the top leader of the United Cartels, an organization capable of manufacturing multiple tons of methamphetamine every single month out of labs hidden across Michoacan state. He was first charged by the Justice Department's Criminal Division back in 2024. Then, in August of 2025, the DOJ announced criminal charges against several command and control elements of the organization, targeting the men running the cartel's leadership structure alongside him. And now, less than a year later, prosecutors have gone straight into his own household, his son, his nephew, both charged, both facing life in prison. Drop a comment right now if you think a cartel boss's own family should get special treatment in federal court, because prosecutors are making it very clear that inside the United Cartels, blood is not protection, blood is a target. Here is how big this organization actually is. According to the Justice Department, the United Cartels controls a distribution network that spans the United States, with confirmed operational hubs in Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, Kansas City, Sacramento, Los Angeles, Denver, and Chicago. 8 major American cities, each one a node in a supply chain feeding methamphetamine into American neighborhoods. And the network does not stop at the border. Prosecutors say it extends into Europe, into Australia, and into other regions across the globe. This is not a regional trafficking operation. This is transnational infrastructure, built to manufacture a drug at industrial scale in Mexico and distribute it across multiple continents simultaneously. On February 20th, 2025, the U.S. Department of State formally designated the United Cartels as both a foreign terrorist organization and a specially designated global terrorist, under the same legal framework used against the Sinaloa Cartel and CJNG. That single designation changed everything about how federal prosecutors can charge every person connected to this organization. Every kilogram moved, every dollar laundered, every weapon carried in relation to a drug deal. all of it now falls under terrorism law, not just narcotics law. And that is exactly the framework prosecutors used against El Abuelo's son and nephew this week. Assistant Attorney General Tyson Duva did not mince words when this indictment was announced. He said Farias Mendoza and Vega Farias are charged with trafficking immense amounts of methamphetamine into the United States and supporting a foreign terrorist organization. He called them close relatives of the United Cartels' top leader and said this indictment demonstrates the criminal division's systematic, focused effort to dismantle Mexican cartels by targeting their command and control elements, including those within cartel leaders' closest circles. Read that again. Closest circles. The Justice Department is not hiding the strategy. They are going after the family. And once you understand the actual charges on this indictment, you understand why that strategy is so aggressive. Conspiracy to manufacture and distribute methamphetamine, knowing it would be imported into the United States, carries a mandatory minimum of 10 years and a maximum of life in federal prison under U.S. narcotics law. Providing material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization carries up to 20 years on its own. And then there is the firearms count. Using, carrying, and possessing a firearm during a drug trafficking crime normally adds a mandatory minimum of 5 years, stacked on top of everything else, served consecutively, not concurrently. But prosecutors did not charge a standard firearm. They charged machine guns and destructive devices. Under federal law, that upgrades the mandatory minimum on the firearms count alone to 30 years, consecutive, before a single day of the underlying drug or terrorism sentence even begins. Stack all 3 counts together, and Juan Jose Farias Mendoza and Israel Vega Farias are not looking at a plea deal. They are looking at spending the rest of their lives in a United States federal prison, guaranteed by statute, if a jury convicts them. Type United in the comments if you had no idea this investigation traced all the way back to a small town outside Knoxville, Tennessee, because that is exactly where this case began. U.S. Attorney Francis Hamilton for the Eastern District of Tennessee laid out the origin story himself. The investigation into the United Cartels started with a single methamphetamine seizure in a small town outside Knoxville. From there, investigators traced the supply chain outward, eventually connecting it to a much larger interdiction of over 950 kilograms of methamphetamine and fentanyl seized outside of Atlanta. Nearly a ton of poison intercepted in a single operation, and it all led federal agents back through the distribution network, through the command structure, and eventually straight to the doorstep of El Abuelo's own family. Sit with that for a second. A traffic stop outside Knoxville, not a border crossing, not a port. A small-town seizure hundreds of miles from Mexico, that patient investigators refused to close out as just another local drug bust. They pulled the thread. They followed the supply chain state by state, distribution node by distribution node, until it connected to the near-ton seizure outside Atlanta, and from there straight into the command structure of a cartel the U.S. government classifies as a terrorist organization. That is how modern cartel investigations actually work now. Not one dramatic raid. Years of quiet thread-pulling that ends with the boss's own son in federal custody. That kind of investigation does not happen with one agency working alone. Hamilton described it as a true whole-of-government effort, partnering multiple federal law enforcement agencies with state and local counterparts, including the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the Tennessee Highway Patrol, and the 9th Judicial Task Force. From a highway stop in Tennessee to a federal indictment naming the cartel boss's own son, this case is a direct example of how local seizures are now feeding directly into national security prosecutions against Mexican cartel leadership. Homeland Security Investigations led the case on the ground, and Acting Executive Associate Director John Condon made the agency's position clear. He said the United Cartels have fueled violence, addiction, and instability both in the United States and abroad, and that HSI remains committed to identifying and investigating cartel leadership and their networks wherever they operate. This indictment falls under the Homeland Security Task Force initiative, established by Executive Order 14,159, a whole-of-government partnership built specifically to eliminate cartels, foreign gangs, and transnational criminal organizations operating inside American borders and beyond them. Share this video if you think targeting a cartel leader's own children and nephews is the fastest way to actually collapse an organization like this. Because that is exactly the theory prosecutors are testing right now. Cartel command structures survive raids on street-level dealers. They survive the arrest of mid-level distributors. Those roles get replaced within days. What they do not survive as easily is the systematic removal of the people the top leader actually trusts with logistics, with money, with enforcement, the people running operations from inside his own family, because those are relationships built over decades, not job openings you can fill overnight. Farias Mendoza and Vega Farias are both charged with using, carrying, and possessing firearms, including machine guns and destructive devices, in connection with the drug trafficking conspiracy. That means this was not a paperwork operation. That means armed enforcement, real firepower capable of standing up to rival cartels and Mexican security forces alike, was built directly into how this family allegedly moved methamphetamine into the United States. And this did not happen in isolation. Remember, El Abuelo himself was first charged by the Justice Department's Criminal Division back in 2024. Then in August of 2025, the DOJ went after several more command and control elements of the organization, the men running logistics, security, and finance underneath him. This week's indictment is not the opening move. It is the latest strike in a campaign that has been building against this specific cartel for 2 straight years, moving methodically from the outer layers of the organization inward toward the one man at the center of all of it. Here is exactly where this case stands right now. Juan Jose Farias Mendoza and Israel Vega Farias were indicted yesterday by a federal grand jury in the District of Columbia. If convicted on every count, both men face a maximum sentence of life in federal prison, with mandatory minimums that could keep them locked up for decades, even under the most lenient possible sentencing outcome. Homeland Security Investigations continues to investigate. Trial attorneys Kirk Handrish and Roger Polak of the Criminal Division's Money Laundering, Narcotics, and Forfeiture Section are prosecuting the case alongside Assistant U.S. Attorney Kevin Quentzer for the Eastern District of Tennessee. And El Abuelo himself, the man both defendants call family, remains the primary target of an investigation the Justice Department has publicly stated is nowhere near finished. If you want to know the moment federal prosecutors move on El Abuelo directly, subscribe, because that indictment is coming. A methamphetamine seizure outside Knoxville, Tennessee, turned into an investigation that reached across 3 continents and landed directly inside the family of one of Mexico's most powerful drug lords. His son, his nephew, both facing life in prison, both charged as terrorists under United States law. The United Cartels built an empire on the theory that blood ties would protect the people closest to the top. The Justice Department just proved that theory wrong, and they are not done.